Good evening, universe. How are you? Ah, what a Saturday. Um, okay, so I want to talk about a couple of movies I saw today. I went and saw a double feature at a local theater here called Star Cinema Grill, which is very similar to the Alamo Draft House in Austin, Texas, and I'm sure there's a bunch of places like this throughout the country now. You know, it's kind of like a dine and watch a movie type thing. So I went and saw. I was originally going to see what do you call it? A Good Day to Die Hard. However, they didn't have signs on the door that they were doing it for. They had not, I guess, gotten to that point in the thing, and I asked someone if this was the theater, and they said, yeah. So I go in the theater and sit down, and 11 o'clock comes, and the movie doesn't come on. I'm like, what the heck is going on? Did they late or something? And then finally, the person who took care of me, this lady named Desiree, who was my server, she came in and I asked her. I said, "Is this the movie for Good Day to Die Hard?" And she said, "Oh yeah, it is. They just didn't put the signs out like I was talking about earlier, and that it should be it was supposed to start at 11:30." I was like, "Oh, okay." Well, about 2 minutes later, she came back in and said, "I'm so sorry. I didn't realize this, but this is actually identity theft." So I saw identity theft, and you can probably tell that by the title of the video. Anyway, so here is my review of the first of the two films, Identity Theft. It stars Jason Bateman, and the other actress, I'm not entirely sure. I think her last name was Huff or something. I can't remember. Don't quote me on that one, but I know Jason Bateman is the lead actor. Well, I think that the setup was a little too simple for this, and it's almost the extreme version of identity theft, and it has to be because it's a comedy. It's not designed to be dramatic in any way until unless it's the feel good part at the very end of the film, right? But the setup is kind of quick, and then all of a sudden we're into this whole thing where, although it's strange because they set it up quickly that he's going to get his identity stolen, and then all of a sudden you see the person who's stolen his identity because he has a really weird name. His name is Sandy Patterson, which is a unisexual style name. However, most people pick on it and say, "Oh, it's a girl's name. That's a girl's name." Well, Sandy, Koufax probably would kick you in the balls if you told him that. But yeah, so it's he has a female name. His character's name is Sandy Patterson. This woman, calls him pretending to be a credit card company or whatever, giving him fraud alerts. She says, "I want to put you on our fraud protection plan. I'm just going to name your name, birth date, and social security number." And so the guy's going to start giving her all this information just out of the blue because he thinks it's a credit card company. And I guess he's saying that they're trying to say that people fall for that easily, which maybe they do. I wouldn't fall for it. If someone said, "I'm from a credit card company and you've been, hacked, I'm going to need your name, birth date, and phone number," I would say, "Well, give me your phone number and I'll call you back at your office and talk to you because I'm not just going to give that information." But whatever, he's, I guess, a moron. I'm not sure. Anyway, so he gives her the information, supposedly, and then next thing we know, we see her, and she's, getting credit cards, and da-da-da, and she's, going crazy, and hooking up with guys, and buying rounds, and, salons, and just everything. So, eventually, this starts to affect this guy's work because he has, very shortly after, he starts getting all of his cards are getting cut up by people. They're like, "Oh, I'm sorry, your card's over maximum." And he calls these people and they say, "Well, it happened in Florida." He's like, "I live in Colorado. How the hell can I do all this stuff in Florida? I live here. This is my home. I don't even go to Florida." So this becomes a whole issue in his job, and he handles, basically, essentially like, I don't want to say hedge funds, but I guess that's probably somewhat similar to it, for a large corporation. And so they decide, well, you're having all these issues. You've been arrested for, all this stuff, because they're basically saying he's, this other person who was impersonating him got into some criminal behavior and was arrested and was freed, but did not show up for the court date. So it starts a chain where he gets arrested in Colorado for a crime in Florida, and they're about to extradite him, and then they find out that it's actually a woman, Sandy Patterson. And they say, the cop tells them, well, identity theft issues, we have a better chance of catching them now than we ever did. And Bateman says, well, what does that mean the chances are? I mean, the chances are good. And the guy says, oh yeah, 5-6%. So basically saying it's hopeless. So his boss is about to fire him, as I've sort of already started to say again and again. And he says, give me a week, and I'll bring her back here. I'll get her to try and apologize to you and explain it to you as my boss, and then the cops can be listening in the other room, and da-da-da. And so he sets off to Florida to find this lady. He finds her real simply. This takes 25 minutes before he even goes to try and find her. It's not a quick thing. Once he gets taken within the first 5 minutes, but it takes 25 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever, for him to decide to go after the woman. So he finally goes after her, finds her in Florida. She continually, beats the shit out of him and embarrasses him as he's trying to get her back to this location where, she's get him back to this location where he's, his boss is, so he can get her to, say this stuff and get her arrested. So he just goes through all this stuff that it's almost just unbelievable he would even tolerate it. Like, why wouldn't he just say, I'm just going to call the cops? Or in the movie, there are these, like, I don't want to say drug dealers, but I guess people who do illegal activities who have murderous intent towards this person, and they're trying to kill her. I don't know why he wouldn't just say, okay, listen, stop being a bitch, and let's go and do this, or I'll leave you for them, and I'll let them blow your brains out or something. I mean, he just tolerated so much. She brought another guy into this hotel room where they were at. I mean, all this stuff just to embarrass him, talking about how bad his penis was. I don't even understand why the hell she kept talking about how he had no feeling in his crotch. I mean, it was just bizarre. But so she basically does everything she can to embarrass him. He still sticks with her, and somehow they're supposed to forge this friendship. I don't know how it is. But towards the end, he talks about how, he's like, oh, you started to teach me things, not to be a chump, and taught me confidence. Well, she didn't teach him confidence or anything. And every time he tries to have a real conversation with her, she lies to him about stuff. At one point, she's saying, you want to be like me? You got little girls at home and all this? I don't even know my own real name. I was, raised in a foster home and kicked around so much, and my name changed so many times, I don't even know what my real name is. And you want to be like me? Yeah, it's great. And Bateman's like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize what you went through. And she says, well, you shouldn't believe me anyway, because I'll fucking lie. So she basically just lies about everything. I don't know how you're supposed to forge a friendship with her. I mean, I guess suspension of disbelief or something, but I can't believe you would suspend your belief that much. So there were some funny moments, though. There were a couple of funny moments, but it was overweighted by the plausibility of how much this guy would put up with. It seems like he would have gone through a lot more. And then in the end, this woman who has, just basically just done everything she can to humiliate him, starts suddenly going, oh, okay, well, I carried you because you passed out, and because she gets attacked by these snakes at one point, these like little pythons or boas or whatever. And so he passes out, and so she picks him up. He doesn't have his pants for some reason, but she carries him to a bus station a half mile away or whatever, and he's like, oh, wow, you carried me all that way? I was like, I'd be like, I wouldn't have not had pants and passed out if you would have not been acting like an ass this entire time and just, dealt with what you needed to deal with. So it's peculiar how they forge a friendship, supposedly, and then she meets his little girls at the end, and she's making him laugh, and and then the next day, he's suddenly having a strike of consciousness because he's like, oh, she's a good person. She's not a good person. She stole your identity. She stole countless other people's identities. And she's a good person? And she's never told you the actual truth about who she is. I mean, there's just no redeeming quality about the character that makes you go, oh, wow, she picked him up in his boxers and carried him to a bus station. She must be nice. I mean, come on. Seriously. So she has a strike, he has a strike of consciousness. And he's like, I can't do it. I'm not going to take you to work with me or whatever. But when he goes in to tell her all this, she's gone. And he's like, oh, she ran out. She still wouldn't face the music of her own culpability. So he goes on to work, and the boss says, what about this and this? And he says, I couldn't do it. And you know what? Even if I could have, I wouldn't have. And the boss looks at him like, what are you talking about? And you look over to the other side of the building or one of the offices, and you see whatever her name is, the identity theft Sandy, standing there talking to the cop that talked to Jason Bateman's character earlier in the movie. And she gives this full confession, and the cop says, okay. And she's handcuffed, mind you. I mean, there's just some unbelievable things that are not even logical in like life. So the police guy steps out so Jason Bateman can talk to her, and she says, this was always going to end with the police anyway, and I had to fix what I did, and usually I'm running by now, but here I am still. So I guess that's good or whatever, and this is what you're supposed to do. So he says thank you, and she walks out of the office. Now the police are not standing by the office waiting to carry her off, even though she just admitted to all these things. And she's proven earlier in the movie that she can unlock handcuffs with a bobby pin. It doesn't make any sense, just in general, even if they don't know about the bobby pin thing. But despite that, they should be standing outside the office waiting for her, but they're not. So she walks out of the office and walks down the hall. The police weren't even anywhere in sight, really. But apparently, I guess she's trustworthy enough since she's only stolen people's identities and run up, massive credit card debt, and the credit card companies are going to eat it. I guess, which I don't care personally about that either, but people suffer for it too. So, anyways, so she, is just left there to walk down the hall by herself to go to the cops. It's like, okay. And then the final feel-good scene of the movie is, and at some point he starts calling her Diana during the movie instead of Sandy. But at the feel-good moment of the movie is we cut to, and it's, I don't know, 2 years or whatever later, and they're visiting her at prison in what I can only assume is some kind of bizarre contact visitation area, which I've never seen in my life. And I actually work in a prison, so I guess I can't suspend disbelief on this one because I know what the levels of interaction are in a contact visitation area. So she's sitting out there on a picnic table with his wife and his 30 kids and all this, and they're talking, and he's like, okay, and she's talking about how she's passed economics and this class, and he's like, hey, and Jason Bateman's telling her how, I've started a Kickstart program, or not Kickstart program, like a second chance program. So basically, he's going to try and help her find a job at his company once she's been released from prison in 3 years. It's just like, what? I mean, I don't even get it. And then he says, oh, by the way, a friend and I got your fingerprints and ran them, and here's what we found out from Wisconsin. Well, wouldn't you know her real name already because of the fact she's in prison? I mean, you don't think you think the people who arrested her for this identity theft, this massive felony, weren't like, we don't really need to know her real name. We'll just call her inmate number 87186. I mean, what? Where is the logic of that? It seems like you'd have already known her real name by then, but he doesn't. So he finds it for her at the end and says, here you go, I found your identity. And she's like, I don't need it. I know who I am. Well, I know what I was. I'm going to throw up. It was ridiculous. It was just, the whole movie, there were some moments that were funny, but it was just so slow to get into it. And the abuse was so ridiculous that you just didn't buy they would do any of this shit. So here's my rating. Characters, I'm trying to rate it on a couple of things. Characters, number one, the characters were not strong. Not great characters. Jason Bateman was the best one out of the whole thing. The other lady who played the identity theft, Diana person, she wasn't bad, but she was real cheesy at times. So I would give her, based on her, and then the other characters, the wife, who was never fleshed out very well, just kind of comes in and out of there. And then they have the cute little kids, but they don't have any, personality or specific characteristics as well. Characters, out of 5, 2 is being generous. 2 is being generous. Story, out of 5, interesting story concept, but 2. Writing, not strong on the writing. I mean, the writing wasn't bad. I think the writing was mediocre. The story was a bigger issue than the actual dialogue. Because there was some funny moments of dialogue. I'll give it a 3, but not more than that. Direction, nothing amazing here. Nothing that made you stand out and go, okay, this is a director really took this and ran with it and did something good. It just looked very formulaic, very cookie cutter. So I would give that I'd give that a 2 too. And once again, being generous. So I would say overall, this was like a 2 movie out of 5, and I'm being generous, honestly, really generous in it. I could understand the dialogue. I think there was even some few little minor issues of continuity, but whatever. The snakes things was weird. I mean, the whole setup, it was so questionable. It was hard to believe it. So, I would say 2 out of 5, 2 out of 5 stars. And once again, being very generous. I'm not even sure I'd give it a star. A banana or something, but a clover, a blue diamond. I'm not sure. But anyway, so that's my review of Identity Theft. You may very well lose your mind watching it, which I don't know if that's identity theft, but it's in the same category. So take care. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Have a great night.